Hi, you are watching Revenge of Reddit. We met when we were barely old enough to understand what love was. I was 8, she was 7, and our worlds were so small back then. Just a few streets, a playground, and the smell of summer rain on old pavement. Her name was Anna. She had a laugh that could light up the dullest afternoon, and eyes that always seemed to be searching for something beyond the horizon. We were inseparable, climbing trees, riding bikes, dreaming about who we'd become one day. At first, it was nothing but friendship, the kind that felt eternal because children never think about endings. But as the years passed, something inside me shifted. I started noticing how her hair caught the sunlight, how her smile made my heart race, how I'd look for excuses just to be near her. She became the center of my young universe. Of course, I never told her. I was too shy, too afraid that revealing my feelings would ruin the perfect friendship we had. And besides, who would she ever see in me? Even back then, the difference between us was clear. My family didn't have much. My father worked in construction. My mother cleaned offices at night. We lived in a cramped apartment with peeling wallpaper and creaking floors. There was never enough money, never enough time, and never a day without worry. When I was 15, everything got worse. My father had an accident on the job, a fall that broke his spine and left him unable to work. Overnight, the weight of our family's survival shifted onto my shoulders. I started working part-time after school, loading trucks, washing dishes, anything that brought in a few coins. I'd come home exhausted, hands blistered, back aching, but I never let my grades slip. My mother used to say education was the only ladder out of the pit we were born into, and I believed her. Anna, meanwhile, lived a completely different life. Her parents were professionals, a lawyer and a doctor. She had new clothes every season, went on vacations abroad, and worried about nothing more serious than passing her math tests. Yet, despite the growing gulf between our worlds, our friendship endured. She'd wait for me after work, with a cup of coffee, and stories about her day. She'd help me study when I was too tired to keep my eyes open. And every time she smiled at me, I felt that same surge of warmth I'd felt as a boy. By the time we graduated high school, I was deeply, hopelessly in love with her. But I told myself I'd wait until I was worthy, until I had something to offer her. University was a test of will. I worked nights and studied days, often sleeping only a few hours. My classmates partied, traveled, lived freely. I could barely afford bus fare. Anna, of course, thrived. She was beautiful, confident, surrounded by admirers. Guys lined up to take her out, and every time I saw her laughing with one of them, it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. But she always came back to me, to the boy who had known her since childhood, the one she trusted with her secrets. That gave me hope. I decided I'd confess everything at graduation. I'd have my degree, a job offer lined up, a future I could build on. I'd finally stand before her, not as the poor boy from the wrong side of town, but as a man who had fought for his dreams and won. That night came faster than I expected. The hall was filled with lights, music, and laughter. Anna looked stunning. A white dress, her hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders. My hands were trembling as I pulled her aside. I told her everything, how I'd loved her since we were children, how she was the reason I kept pushing forward even when life tried to break me. Her smile faded as I spoke. Then she laughed. Not the warm, joyful laugh I knew, but something cold and sharp. "Oh, come on," she said. You're like a brother to me. And besides," she looked me up and down with a smirk, "I could never date someone like you. You're sweet, but you're poor. It's pathetic." I don't remember how I got home that night. I only remember the sound of her laughter echoing in my head, over and over, until it turned into a dull roar. A few days later, I heard from a mutual friend that she had been telling people about my little confession, calling me desperate, a charity case, the poor boy with a crush. The humiliation was unbearable. Everything I had believed, every dream, every quiet moment I had treasured, crumbled to dust. I deleted her number, blocked her on every platform, and for the first time in my life, I cut someone out completely. It was like ripping out a piece of my soul, but I knew I had to do it. I swore I would never again let anyone make me feel that small. The years that followed were a blur of relentless work. I poured every ounce of energy into my career. I took risks, seized opportunities, learned from every failure. Slowly, painfully, I built a name for myself. By 30, I was running my own company. I bought my parents a house, paid off every debt, and finally, allowed myself to breathe. Somewhere along the way, I met someone new. Her name was Elena. Smart, kind, strong in all the ways that mattered. She loved me not for what I had, but for who I was. With her, I discovered what real love felt like, not the desperate longing of unrequited affection, but the steady, unshakable bond between equals. I hadn't thought about Anna in years. Not really. Until one day, fate decided our paths should cross again. It was a cold autumn afternoon. I was leaving a business meeting when I saw her standing by the cafe across the street. At first, I wasn't sure it was her. The confident sparkle she once had was gone. Her clothes were plain, her eyes tired. She was holding a little boy by the hand. "Daniel," she said softly when our eyes met. "It's been a long time." It had been more than a decade since I'd last seen her, but that single word, my name on her lips, dragged me back through every memory I'd tried so hard to bury. I hesitated, torn between curiosity and the urge to walk away. But something in her expression, a fragile mix of shame and hope, kept me rooted to the spot. We talked. At first it was awkward, stilted. She told me about her life, how she'd fallen in love with a wealthy businessman right after college, how they'd married quickly and had a child. But the fairy tale didn't last. He turned out to be unfaithful, selfish, and cruel. The divorce had left her with nothing but a small apartment and a mountain of regrets. I thought I was choosing a future, she admitted, her voice trembling. But I was just running from fear. She asked about my life. I told her the truth, about the company I'd built, the people I'd helped, the woman I loved. I didn't say it to impress her. I said it because it was my reality, and I no longer felt the need to hide or apologize for it. The more I spoke, the more I saw her smile falter. There was envy in her eyes, yes, but something deeper too. A realization that the boy she'd once mocked had become a man she could have been proud of. "Daniel," she said finally, "I owe you an apology. For everything. For the way I treated you. For the things I said. I was stupid and immature, and I let other people's opinions control me. The truth is..." She paused, biting her lip. "I loved you too. I think I always did. But I was terrified of what people would think if I dated someone who didn't come from money." The words hung in the air like a cruel joke. For years I had imagined hearing them, dreamt of her, realizing what she'd lost. But now that the moment was here, I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No closure. Just an empty, distant pity. "I appreciate the apology," I said quietly, "but it doesn't change anything. That chapter of my life is over." Her face crumpled, but she didn't give up. Over the next few weeks, she found reasons to contact me. A text here, a coffee invitation there. At first, I kept my distance, but she was persistent, weaving herself back into my orbit under the pretense of friendship. Eventually, she confessed what I had suspected all along. She wanted a second chance. "Please," she whispered one evening as we walked through the park. "I know I don't deserve it. But I can be different now. I am different. We could be happy together." It was heartbreaking, in a way. The girl who had once thought she was too good for me was now begging for a place in my life. But I couldn't do it. Not out of anger, not out of pride, but because the person I had loved no longer existed, and the man I had become no longer needed her. "I'm sorry, Anna," I said, "but I love someone else, and even if I didn't, I could never go back to what we were. Too much has happened." She cried. She pleaded. She tried to convince me that our history meant something, that first love never truly dies. But I knew better. First love is a beautiful illusion, a memory that teaches you, shapes you, and then lets you go. And holding on to it can destroy the future you deserve. Months passed, and I thought she'd finally accepted the truth. But then the messages started again. At first they were harmless. Little notes about how she was thinking of me, songs that reminded her of our childhood. Then they became desperate. She showed up outside my office. She sent letters. She even tried to talk to my girlfriend. It was as if she had built her entire world around the idea that I was the key to fixing everything that had gone wrong in her life. And the more I rejected her, the more determined she became. "I know you still feel something," she said once, tears streaming down her face. "You have to. You loved me." "I did," I admitted. "But that was a long time ago. And love isn't a chain. It's not something that binds you to the past forever. It's supposed to make you grow. And we've both grown in different directions." Her obsession became exhausting, not because I feared her, but because I pitied her. It was painful to watch someone cling so desperately to a ghost. I tried to be kind, but eventually I had to set firm boundaries. When she showed up at my parents' house one evening, crying on the porch, they gently told her the same thing I had. It was over. It had been over for a very long time. "Anna," my mother said softly, "you can't build your life on regret. He's moved on. You should too." But regret had become the foundation of her existence. She admitted that every relationship since me had failed because she kept comparing them to a version of me that no longer existed. She confessed that she hated herself for the things she'd said, for choosing appearances over love, for laughing at the one person who had truly cared for her. "It's like karma," she whispered one day. "I mocked you for being poor, and now I'm the one who's empty. I thought I was above you, and now I'm the one begging. And the worst part is, I deserve it." There was nothing left for me to say. Her pain was her own to face, just as my pain had once been mine. And just as I had clawed my way out of despair and humiliation, she would have to find her way out of guilt and regret. The last time we spoke was on a rainy afternoon. She asked to meet one final time. We sat across from each other in the same park, where we'd once shared our childhood secrets. She looked smaller than I remembered, older too, not just in years, but in spirit. "Do you ever think about what could have been?" she asked quietly. "Sometimes," I admitted. But then I remember that everything that happened, the rejection, the humiliation, the heartbreak, it all pushed me to become the man I am today. If you had said yes back then, I might never have had the strength to build this life. So, in a strange way, I'm grateful. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I'm glad you found happiness," she whispered. "I just wish it could have been with me." And with that, she stood and walked away. I watched her disappear down the path, and for the first time in years, I felt truly free, Life continued, as it always does. The seasons changed, new challenges appeared, and old scars faded into memories. My career grew, my family thrived, and my relationship with Elena deepened into something I had never known before, a partnership built not on childhood dreams or desperate longing, but on respect, trust, and mutual growth. Together, we built a home filled with laughter, warmth, and purpose. Sometimes, when I walked through the old neighborhoods, or past the park where Anna and I had once played as children, the memories would surface. Not with pain anymore, but with a bittersweet nostalgia. A reminder of who I once was and how far I had come. I no longer hated her for what she did. I didn't even resent her. If anything, I felt a quiet gratitude. Because without the pain she caused, I might never have found the strength to rise. Years later, I heard bits and pieces about her life through mutual acquaintances. Her son grew up and left for college. She dated occasionally, but never remarried. People said she threw herself into charity work, perhaps trying to balance the scales, perhaps searching for redemption. But beneath it all, there was a sadness that never seemed to leave her. It was as if she were forever chasing a shadow, the ghost of a life that might have been. Once I saw her again by accident. I was speaking at a conference about entrepreneurship and resilience, about how adversity can either break you or build you. She was sitting in the audience, near the back, listening quietly. Our eyes met briefly, and in that instant, I saw everything. The regret, the longing, the unspoken apology. She didn't approach me, and I didn't go to her. There was nothing left to say. As I spoke to the crowd that day, I shared a piece of my story. Not her name, not the details, but the essence. I told them about the boy who had once been humiliated, and how that humiliation became the fire that forged his future. I spoke about rejection not as an end, but as a catalyst, a push that sends you hurtling towards something greater if you let it. And when the applause filled the room, I realized something profound. My story wasn't one of heartbreak at all. It was a story of transformation. Because the truth is, the universe doesn't waste pain. Every wound, every insult, every betrayal, they are raw materials for growth. They can destroy you, yes. But if you choose, they can also build you into someone unrecognizable to the person who once begged for acceptance. That's what happened to me. The boy who once stood trembling before a girl and confessed his love is gone. The man who took his place no longer seeks validation from anyone. And that is perhaps the greatest victory of all. Not the money, not the success, not even the love I eventually found. The greatest victory is knowing that I am enough, just as I am. As for Anna, I think she eventually made peace with her choices. Maybe she never stopped loving the version of me she once knew. Maybe she still wonders what our life might have been. But life isn't built on what if. It's built on what is. And the reality is that her rejection was not the end of my story. It was the beginning. There's a quote I once read that stuck with me. Sometimes the people who leave you broken are the same ones who unknowingly hand you the tools to rebuild yourself. That's exactly what she did. By trying to break me, she gave me the strength to become unbreakable. By calling me pathetic, she taught me the value of self-worth. By laughing at my love, she helped me understand what real love should look like. And perhaps, in her own way, she learned too. That money means nothing without meaning. That appearances fade, but character remains. That the opinions of others are a poor substitute for the voice of your own heart. Most of all, she learned that the people you look down on today might be the ones standing above you tomorrow. Not because they wanted revenge, but because they refused to stay beneath anyone's judgment. If there's a lesson in all of this, and I believe there is, it's this: never measure your worth by how someone else sees you. People will underestimate you, ridicule you, reject you, not because you're small, but because they can't see how big you're meant to become. And when they do, you have a choice. You can let their words define you, or you can let them drive you. I chose the latter. And because of that choice, I stand here today not as a victim of someone else's cruelty, but as the architect of my own destiny. Sometimes I still think about that night, the graduation, the laughter, the humiliation that once felt like the end of the world, and I smile, because I know now that it wasn't the end at all. It was the spark, the fire, the beginning of everything. In the end, life has a way of balancing itself. The boy she mocked became the man she regretted losing. The girl who believed she was too good for love learned that love isn't something you earn with status. It's something you nurture with kindness. I live my life surrounded by people who see me for who I am, not what I have. I wake up each morning next to the woman I love, in a home I built with my own hands, knowing that every struggle, every tear, every betrayal led me here, and I wouldn't change a thing. As for Anna, she remains a chapter, one I've read and learned from, but no longer revisit. I hope she's found peace. I hope she's forgiven herself. Because in the end, forgiveness is the only way forward, for both of us. So, this is not a story about revenge. It's not even a story about heartbreak. It's a story about transformation, about how rejection can become a gift, how humiliation can ignite ambition, and how the end of one dream can lead to the birth of something far greater. If you're listening to this and carrying the weight of someone else's judgment, if you've ever been called not enough, too poor, too ordinary, remember this: you are not defined by their words. You are defined by what you choose to do next. I was once that boy, humiliated, rejected, laughed at. And now I am more than I ever dreamed I could be, because I chose to rise, and so can you.